Hello, Elizabeth. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me today, John. I am very, very excited to be here.
Hmm. After perusing your website, I'd like to know more about you, where you come from, and how you got to the point where you have this business and then you chose to write books about it.
Thank you. That's a brilliant question to start with. I describe myself as a third culture child. So I'm a child of immigrants, and my parents met when they came to London to study. And I was born in London, grew up till about the age 10. Then I was taken back to my parents' home country, which is Nigeria. And then when I got back, I remember in school a friend of mine brought in a cookbook, and for some reason she gave it to me. And in that cookbook was how to bake. And in those days, in many Nigerian households, we do not use the oven. In fact, it was used for storage. But I remember just experimenting, baked a cake, and it came out perfectly. And I couldn't believe that simple ingredients would create something so amazing. But over the years, I was made to forget all about that foolishness. And obviously, I studied, I became a microbiologist after completing my master's in medical microbiology and parasitology. And then I came back to the UK to work in some of the best hospitals, I trained at, I became a scientist, I was trained. And then I did that for many, many years, for well over a decade. And I remember one day thinking, there's got to be more to my life than being a lab rat. So I decided to do something to do with business, and I went and did an MBA. And in the course of doing the MBA, after a couple of years, I became a headhunter, and I worked in the city recruiting chief execs. And here I was, never run a lemonade stand, and I was recruiting these high-powered individuals.
Wow.
And I did that for, again, another decade or so. And then 2008, we know what happened. The market burst, and I lost my job. And then I thought back to my childhood and what I would love, love, love to do. And I thought, you know what? If I don't do it now, I'll never do it.
Mm.
Milestone birthday, midlife crisis, whatever it is. And I started baking cakes. And that began another part of my journey. And by a series of actions and what happened, I somehow ended up making cakes for the royal family, royal families around the world, the ultra high net worth. And yeah, that was how my journey into luxury started.
Wow. Well, good for you. Everything you
Thank
said,
you.
including the making of cakes, makes me think that you're a successful person. You're a hard worker, hardworking person, and I applaud you for that. Now, do you want to get to your books? Because I can hardly wait to hear more about how you got to the point where you write books about this passion of yours. Shall we talk about the Luxpreneur? Is that how we pronounce it?
Yes, Luxpreneur. That's my latest book. Now, I'm going to go back slightly to the pandemic. Now, we all know what happened. We were all at home. So, obviously, my clients that came to the UK were no longer coming to the UK. Everybody was at home. And I kind of was invited to talk on so many online forums. I joined Clubhouse. I realized that there wasn't really much discussion around luxury business, luxury lifestyle, yes, luxury travel, yes, but nothing about luxury business. And then I read a bunch of books and I realized that, hang on, the luxury books that are out there, luxury business books, they were written by professors of luxury or people who had worked for massive brands, the famous brands that we all know. But there was nothing out there from a founder's perspective. And then I thought to myself, when you think of a brand like Louis Vuitton, how often do you hear that the founder was a 13-year-old who walked all the way from his village to Paris barefoot, and he walked 300 miles and it took him 2 years? Is that Louis Vuitton not the same as the one who founded the brand? And then I looked into other brand founders like Gucci, who was a porter at the London Savoy Hotel. And it was actually him handling luggage that gave him the idea to design very elegant and beautiful leather goods from his family leather business. So I just kind of thought to myself, there needs to be books like that to show people that anyone can set up a luxury business. And this is what you need to do in order to set up the business and also find clients. So that's how the Luxpreneur came about. So it was a pandemic, it was a combination of a number of things. And then I wrote the book, The Luxpreneur.
It says here how to start and build a successful luxury brand. What kind of reception do you have? Who would want this book?
The book is ideal for any business owner. And I know that's a generalization, but there's a reason for that. It gives you an insight into, because a lot of people, when they think luxury, they think, oh my God, it's highfalutin living, it's a private jets, and it's this. Yes, it is. I'm not going to lie. To some extent, it is. However, you need to think about the people that serve that bunch of people. So the person who's running the private jet services, the person who's supplying food, services, the cars, whatever it is, there's always someone who is supplying or serving them or selling to them. And there's no reason why you shouldn't be the person.
Right.
In my opinion, because if somebody like me, I did not have a single contact. I didn't go to school with these people. I don't know any rich people in real life. But when I started my cake journey, again, cakes, which is the barrier to entry for cakes, is so low. Anybody with an oven and anyone who can combine eggs, butter, sugar, flour, milk can make a cake. However, I found my niche because people saw something extraordinary in the cakes I was making, and two, I wasn't afraid to reach out. So my very first, I would say, high-end client that introduced me to the royal family, I literally took the yellow pages and I made over 120 calls until I called her office. That's how because when I was a headhunter, we were trained to make 100 calls a week in order to find prospects. So again, there are principles that you can apply in order to reach out to and sell to high-end people. So it's not just about you living the high life or knowing one form of leather from another, which again, it helps. However, if you're very passionate about what you do, and if you're really fantastic at what you do, there's no reason why you shouldn't sell what you do at a premium. In my book, I lay out the 5 things any luxury brand must have. And as long as you have those 5 things, and as long as you keep striving, there is absolutely no reason why you can't do the same. So that's why I say the book is for anybody, because if Coco Chanel, who was abandoned in an orphanage, and then she was taught to sew, if she can create such a high-end brand like Chanel, and I detail how and principles and everything's in the book, why not you?
Makes sense. I was just thinking about a couple of people I know, both real estate agents. One sells affordable houses, probably sells a lot of them. The other one only sells very high-end mansions, maybe sells 1 or 2 a year.
Yeah.
And it seems like that person makes more money than the one who just constantly showing off houses to many people. So is that something like along the lines of what you're saying? If you're going to be a real estate agent, there's ways of selling those high-end mansions.
Oh, absolutely. But then it's about mindset. And I think your example is absolute perfection, because there's one person who's very comfortable selling affordable, which is great. And I applaud him for that. But then you've got somebody else who, and let's look at the mindset required. Number one, he has chosen his niche. Number two, he realizes he's not going to get 100 clients a year. Number three, he's prepared to wait, because that waiting for the right client, it does something to our energy and our brain and our mind. We're thinking, oh my God, are we ever going to get a client? What's going to happen? Then number four, the sheer amount of work that you need to get that one client. Now, it doesn't mean extra labor. It just means working differently. So it might mean networking. It might mean prospecting differently. I talk about that in the book, how to prospect. So for example, even using things like Google to find high net worth clients, but not using Google the usual way in which many of us do, using Google, for example, even Google Books, Google Images. I give examples of how to do that. So working differently and working harder in some ways. And then finally, the actual product itself, polishing and presenting it in such a way that you move the client who can afford to buy anything in the world, you move them from not sure to, oh my God, how can I be one of the few that buy this? So again, applying those principles of exclusivity and rarity and selling to the client where they are. So avoiding every friction. So for example, the estate agent who's selling affordable housing, if things don't go through or whatever, it's not as big a deal as the other client where if you lose commission on a $10 million house, that is something else. So there's something required there that you would do to make it work. So, and creatively, you got to think of ways to make it work and to serve your clients. So that for me is exactly what I was talking about.
Okay. All right. I'll let you in on a little secret. The fellow that sells to wealthy clients used to be in my band back in the 80s. And
Wow.
we were young and we were crazy, and he had blue hair or whatever, and we jumped around on stage, and then kind of lost track with each other and just reconnected later on in the late 90s, and he looked totally different. So let me ask you, in your book, do you talk about how to present yourself?
To some extent, yes. And it really depends on the type of luxury client. So I usually use the example of King Charles and Ozzy Osbourne, for example.
Right.
When it comes to demographics, so when marketers, say, oh, you need to look at the demographics and blah blah blah. They're both white male. They've both been married and divorced twice. They both live in castles, and they apparently were born within a month of each other. And by the way, they are friends.
My
Many people
goodness.
don't know this, but they are friends.
Okay.
Now, according to demographics, you should sell to them the same because they have so much in common, and demographics will put them in the same group. However, according to luxury psychographics, they are completely different people. So to somebody like Ozzy, who I would call an innovator, trendsetter, the blue hair would probably work because kindred spirit. But to somebody like King Charles, the dressed the part, because he would recognize a handmade suit made in Savile Row by a particular tailor with a button, the blah, 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 than probably, and I don't want to make assumptions here, than probably somebody like Ozzy, who even if he recognizes, he doesn't care.
Yeah.
So that is my point. So to sell to luxury, you have to some particular clients, you do need to look the part.
Yeah.
And also one thing about these clients is that they want to know about you. There's a curiosity because are you another in a long line of people who have the handout, wanted to take their money? Can they, are you a high trust worth person? And the trust begins when you mirror what they look like or what they think somebody in your position should look like. And again, it goes back to even when I was recruiting high-powered CEOs, they needed to dress and look the part.
Okay.
But having said that, once in a while, you have a wild card candidate who bucks your belief system, and
Hmm.
that's fine. When you've made it, then you can dress whichever way you like.
Right, of
When you have
course.
your reputation, yeah.
Yeah.
But when you're trying to make it, yeah.
Yeah. I would imagine that's included in this book. I suppose you mentioned all those things as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it's chock-a-block. I even I even look at, because everything starts with mindset. So I look at you as an individual. And because I created these 9 archetypes for the different types of luxury brand owner or founder. So as a founder myself, I typed myself and I came out artisan and visionary, which is good and bad. It's good because it means I pay attention to craftsmanship. It means the product looks exquisite, etc., etc. And visionary because I'm always thinking about the future and what comes next and how we can move forward and how we can innovate. And that's great. But this is the downside. As an artisan, I'm not going to pay attention to the money. I'm going to spend all the money making sure the product is perfect. And I even speak about perfectionism in the book as well. So a lot of people say, oh my God, I'm a perfectionist, but that has a downside because it means you can't scale your business, you can't delegate. So there's a lot in that. And as a visionary, you needed to be grounded in reality, in the present. You need somebody, you need a business manager or an accountant that pulls you back and goes, oh, that's amazing for 5, 10 years time, but this is the present. How are we going to get there? Who's going to build a bridge for us to get there? So that is why I feel it's very important to, first of all, know who you are. Then secondly, know the basic principles of how you can create a luxury brand. And then finally, in the book, I talk about the clients, the different types, because everything starts and ends with the client and the type of client. And you can't sell to every luxury client the same.
Well, now that you're an author and not just a business owner with your own brand of cakes, and I can hardly wait to get to that part of the conversation. What's it like being an author now? I mean, what do you do? Do you do speaking engagements? Do you do book fairs? What do you do?
All of the above. I came back from Turkey not that long ago. I was invited to speak at the Global Marketing Summit. They invited about 100 speakers from around the world, blah, blah, blah. So I spoke on luxury marketing, but doing it differently because the way many luxury brands have marketed was based on exclusivity and we're amazing and we are the ones that choose who deserves our products, etc., etc. But the world has moved on. Generations have moved on from all that highfalutin stuff. I'm not saying that the codes of luxury still don't apply, but people just need to step back and re-examine how the world is changing, especially around technology and especially with a generational gap in response to what you're trying to deliver. Because clients are now saying, you know what, we'll walk away. So again, there's all that taking place. So yes, I do book fairs, I speak, I travel. As I say to people, I do love traveling. I travel, and yeah, I've been really, really honored, and I feel really, really blessed to be on certain stages. So yes, so that's what I do to promote and as you know, the book promotion never ends. It's one thing after another.
Yeah. Unlikely to become wealthy by selling these books, I
Exactly,
suppose.
exactly.
Now, in your case, I mean, you just mentioned you'd like to travel and the things you told me about places you've been and where you come from, where you grew up and all that. Can this book work for someone who's living in a fair-sized city where there are potential wealthy clients to, say, buy their cakes if that's what they want to do without the need to have to travel? Would this work for them as well?
Oh, absolutely. The one thing I love about the book is it's across all geography. So it's not about, as long as you, and this is the thing, and I think you mentioned the point, as long as you live in the city where you can find a fair few amount of affluent people,
Yeah.
you just need to decide what type of affluent people are they. Because, for example, even in America, the values in the Midwest are completely different to the values in the South, completely different to the values in the East Coast, the North, etc., etc. So it's about, okay, what are the values? Who are these types of people? And how can I best serve them?
Hmm.
So I think, so once you clear that and you know what I call the culture, again, culture is very important. Once you know the culture of the city that you're trying to serve, absolutely, it works because the principles are the same. And it
Oh.
all starts with serving your client.
Hmm. And when was this book published?
Last month. It was
Okay.
published. Yeah, yeah,
A little too
about a
early
month.
to say how sales are doing, but how are sales doing up to now?
Sales are, I mean, sales are fine. I haven't got anything else to compare it with because
Right.
because I'm a bit lonely in that space. There aren't that many how-to luxury books out
That's right.
there.
Yeah.
There isn't, there's hardly any actually. So it's very hard to say. But the one thing I do know though, that just being on platforms like this has massively, massively helped. Because without platforms like this, I stand no chance whatsoever against the big publishers. If that, so I'm just so grateful that I'm able, the book
Cool.
got published, and then I'm even able to talk about it to a
Well,
different audience to what I would have in the UK.
well, I'm enjoying this conversation so far. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
I suppose there may be somebody watching this who's lost their job, or they don't like what they're doing, and they have the personality to do a luxury brand of some sort.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I would say they need to be patient. It's not
Mm.
going to happen overnight.
Nothing
You never
does.
know though, because you can reach out to the right person one time and it's a hit.
Yeah.
Um, it's a constant thing. You're only as good as your last job. You need to really, really, or whatever last business you delivered. So you need to be very much aware of that. These are people that, because they can afford anything,
Hmm.
they with a particular group, if you are out, you are out. Nothing will get you back in
Yeah.
unless a miracle happens. So you need to think carefully about what you are about to enter into. And I would also say that you need to look at the strategy of some of the big brands. So you need to borrow from them. So with the big brands, I look at their pricing on 3 different levels. So you have the lipsticks, the perfume, the tiny small accessories that many of us can buy if we save up for a month or two. Then the next level of pricing, if you save up for maybe a year, the price of a small car or a secondhand car or whatever,
Hmm.
you're able to afford a handbag or maybe some shoes or some off the rack jackets or something. And then the next topmost tier is couture. So that's, you need an arm and a leg, as we say in the UK, maybe a generational wealth or whatever, to be able to afford couture. However, it's the lipsticks and the perfumes that actually create the money for the rest of the chain. So I would say think about your business model, think about your pricing really, really well. Again, I've tried every pricing model on the planet. It didn't work for me. The only thing that worked was value-based pricing. I talk about pricing models in the book as well to help people. And also you need to think about your geography. What is the most price that people will tolerate in your location? You need to think about that as well. You need to think about even competition, because if what you're doing is not unique enough, then that means you've got competition. And if you've got competition, you don't want to price yourself too much out of the market.
Hmm.
So think about your point of differentiation, because I always say the problem with many brands, if even many luxury brands, is that they're not differentiated enough. I need to be able to go into your brand and go, this is the reason I will come back, because you are XYZ. So again, you need to think very, very well before you get into creating a luxury brand.
Hmm. Sounds like there's a lot of thinking that has to go into this. Do you help the reader through the discouragement that could happen? You talk them through that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I believe that. I even start the book with something like, um, in 5 years, over 90 something percent of businesses will fail. And I
Mhm.
believe the failure rate is even higher for luxury. So absolutely, I always manage expectations. However, the one thing about luxury brands that many people don't talk about is that the really successful ones are over 100 years old, over
Mhm.
50 years old. It's about longevity. It's about keeping going and hanging on. Many have nearly come under a few times until they were rescued by finance or this or that or the other. And these are some of the things that people need to think about when they are building the brand, because in order to be successful, they need to be able to stay in business. because your cash flow is absolutely important. So there's a lot of discouragement, there's a lot of no's until you get to your yeses. However, if you find the right niche for you, some particular luxury client types are so loyal, even generationally, they will continue to buy from you as long as you deliver. So again, yes, I do talk them through some of the disappointments.
Now, this is not your first book. I see that you've written another one, Opulencia.
Yes, that was my very first book. It was a cake book. I was celebrating 10 years in business, I believe, at that time. And I thought, let me write a book featuring all the best cakes I've ever done.
Mhm.
So yeah, that was how that came about.
Is it recipes or pictures of cakes or what's in there?
It's both actually. It was the initial idea. I wanted to initially create a big coffee table book and make it all swanky, etc.,
Mm.
etc. And then reality will hit. And then I thought, no, what I'm going to do is I will still have the beautiful pictures, but I'll have the recipes because people were asking, why do you get so many testimonials about the way your cakes taste, in addition to the way they look? And I'm like, for me, the inside is the most important anyway.
Okay.
So I decided to write recipes as well. But I just didn't write recipes. I give you so many tips, so many. So for
Right.
example, a very little known tip about baking, and this is why I would say at least 70% of people who say they can't bake, this is why they fail, is because their ovens are dodgy. Home ovens are not really designed for a lot of the recipes out there. The one thing we fail to do is test our ovens. And I have a foolproof way in the book of testing the oven. Just get a metal tray, put slices of bread on the tray,
Mhm.
put it in the oven, turn the oven to about, I don't know, about 180 degrees centigrade. I think that's about 300 or something Fahrenheit, I think.
325 or something like that, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. So, and then let the bread, let it brown, bring it out, and then look for darker areas as well as lighter areas. So the darker areas are your hot spots, and the lighter areas are your cold spots.
Mhm.
So when you're baking, you obviously will not shove the cake in your hot spot because what would happen is it would rise and then collapse. So those are some of the things I teach in the book, and how to rescue curdled buttercream or curdled batter, that sort of thing.
Wow.
So you're set on the path to victory before you even start. So those are some of the tips that I share in the book.
What about convection oven? Is that any better?
Yes, that's definitely much better. But even then, with convection ovens, you will still find that some still have a problem, especially because with the oven doors, over time the seal kind of like wears out because
Yes.
that constant opening, closing, opening.
Right.
So the seal wears out. Therefore, that means anything towards the door might not bake as quickly as anything towards the back.
Wow.
I used to be a scientist, so for me, thinking about the science of baking and that sort of thing, even the type of pans that you use for baking makes a huge difference. So,
Mhm.
do you want aluminium, which is a very fast conductor of heat? Or do you want to use stainless steel or anodized metal, etc.? So they all have their own pros and cons, but it's entirely up to you, and it depends on the cake recipe.
Right.
So, like I said, so many tips. I even share about even when you weigh your ingredients, start by weighing the eggs first, because with eggs, you can't control the volume too much, but you can control the volume of the weight and volume of the other ingredients. But eggs are a bit dodgy. So what I do is that I weigh my eggs first, whether with shell, whether without shell, doesn't matter. Weigh your eggs first, and then equal quantities of the other ingredients, of the other key ingredients, I mean.
Very good.
And that will give you a much better bake. And then, of course, the combining and this and that, the other. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, you're
Yeah.
not going to become a expert cake maker overnight, so there's going to be a lot of cake being eaten before you start
Yeah.
selling any of them. That's fantastic. Um, Now, the place I've been looking forward to, I'm going to bring it up here. Your website. Please tell us all about that.
Well, I don't want to say I went through hell, but it was very hard to get my vision on a website because I had an idea of what I wanted, etc., etc. And I was so fortunate after many years of being let down, etc., etc. I finally met a great web guy called Sebastian, and he was very even more particular than me, and we just came together. I know I wanted a website that from the very first go it kind of sucks you in, and I actually used the Tiffany website as my guide.
Oh,
I deliberately didn't want to use any other cake websites because, again, people just copy each other in the cake world. So I said to myself, okay, my favorite luxury brand, one of them anyway, is Tiffany, the jewelers. And by the way, anyone wanted to build a luxury brand, in terms of photography, I used jewelry brands in my book as examples. So Tiffany website, you go in and all you want to do is look at jewelry, even if you can't afford anything. And I wanted the same feeling for my cakes. To me, imagery is one of the massive things I talk about in the book. I dedicate time to literally talking about finding the right photographer, the right light, because I'm very passionate about such things. So for the cakes, I knew exactly how I wanted, it was how I wanted people to feel. So when they come in, they stay. And this was way before I knew anything about bounce rates and what Google deems important, how long people spend and the hotspots and stuff. I didn't know anything about that, but I had an instinct for when people arrive, this is how I want them to feel. I want them to never leave my website. So that was why I created it with Sebastian.
wow. Well, it definitely worked on me. I was before this
Thank
conversation, I
you.
did a little, looking back as to who you were and go, oh yeah, that website. I'm gonna bookmark it just for the fun of it and put it in my favorites. Favorites, just look at it once in a while because it's absolutely gorgeous. So I
Thank
invite
you.
people to explore that. Now,
Thank
do
you.
you get much business through it?
Yes, actually, I still do. Well, I'm not surprised, but I still do because what happened was social media came along and a lot of people rushed over to social media, and that's great. However, what's happening is obviously the people controlling social media platforms, they want you to pay for ads. They want you to do plenty other things, spend more, etc. They want you to sell and blah, blah, blah. So that dipped a bit. So the reach dipped.
Hmm.
So even if you have 1 million followers, maybe 1,000 of them might see your posts regularly, depending on the algorithm and
Exactly.
content, etc., etc. So I've always looked at my website as the house that I own. It's
Mhm.
my bit of real estate on the internet, and I see social media as something I pay rent for. It's a fun
Yeah.
cafe or Airbnb or whatever, no matter how long I've been there. They can take it away from me anytime. Now, what's worse now is the proliferation of AI.
Mm.
And what that means is that according to stats, and I don't know, again, I've not verified this, but I know I've read it somewhere that almost half of the traffic on the internet is actually bots. So even if you're having thousands of views on your website, there's no guarantee that they're actually real people, which is scary. And it's projected that by 2030 or thereabouts, 80% of traffic is going to be from bots.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, having that website, and because it's been around for a while, it has quite a nice bit of Google authority. Unless, of course, something drastic happens and Google goes, right, sorry, we're yanking off your website. So
Yeah.
again, it's about maneuvering and playing these games with these tech companies as a
Mm-hmm.
very tiny business owner.
Boy, oh
But I
boy.
would always say to people, please, please, please build your own website, have your own bit of real estate
Yeah.
on,
It
on,
doesn't
on
cost
the
that
internet.
much, you know.
Yeah.
Now, are you thinking of writing a third book?
Oh, absolutely.
All right, tell us all about that.
Absolutely. That's a thing. I don't even know yet. I'm trying to think what would be a good sequel
Mm,
to, because I definitely want to write more business books because I want, especially in the luxury field, where there are quite, I mean, I didn't realize how large a number of small businesses there are in the luxury field. Um, and there are people out there going, crying out for knowledge, but they don't want the big brand case studies that you get on your MBA. And another reason I want to write another book is because a lot of when I did my MBA, as a business student, I wanted to work with a big company, maybe the big consulting firms or big accounting firms. But nowadays, a lot of the kids, they want to set up their own businesses. They really want that entrepreneurial spirit
mhm,
is really deep in them. About
yeah.
it's now flipped. 80% certainly want to set up their own businesses. So, and I'm thinking, it would be lovely to provide more of my experience, more of my practical advice out there. And also being a woman, because again, on the bestseller list, only 17% of business books are written by women. It would be nice to have another perspective
For sure.
of business
Yeah.
that is not just a particular perspective. So that's why I'm thinking of but I still don't know what my next book will be, and I'm open to suggestions.
Well, if it's anything like what you just suggested, it would take you a little bit of time to understand the young people and where their heads are at. And sometimes a generation away from another generation could cloud our judgment, even if we have, all the good intentions. So I guess you'd have your work cut out for there, but I'm sure you would succeed in that as well. That's just my
Thank
opinion.
you so much. That's very kind of you to say. Thank you.
Well, did you want to pitch your latest book? I can put you full frame, and I see you got it there in the background. You could even show it off if you wish. You know.
Thank you.
Oh, there it is. You got them right beside you. Okay,
Right beside
give us a
me.
quick pitch.
Okay, I'm Elizabeth. I've written this book called The Luxpreneur, and The Luxpreneur is about how to start and build a successful luxury brand. It's based on practical advice, it's based on experience, and it's based on wanting everyone and anyone who ever dreamed of working in luxury or being a luxury brand being able to do so. And in the book, that is divided into 3 parts, only 5 chapters. The first part is about you. I look at the mindset, the luxury mindset. I look at what you need to develop in order to come into the luxury market. Then the second part is about the 5 pillars of what makes a luxury business successful. And the final part, which many people absolutely adore, are the 8 different archetypes of luxury client. And some of them will surprise you. I use real examples of celebrities in order to guide you. So as soon as you read about it, you'll go, aha, so that's what XYZ is like, or that's why they behave the way they behave. So yes, I would love it if you support my business and buy the Luxpreneur. And thank you for the opportunity to pitch, John.
My pleasure. I love pitches, and that was a real good one too.
Thank you.
Well, Elizabeth, as you possibly engage in writing another book, I'll be here next year. You could always look me up. I'd love to have you back.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That's very, very kind. And it's been lovely just having this chat with you. It's like
Yeah,
chatting to an old
it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun.
friend.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Well, you take care of yourself and all the best.
Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, and if you like what I do here on Tell Me About Your Book, then I invite you to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and even leave a comment if you wish. And if you are an author, I would sure love to hear from you. Until such time, keep on writing, and remember to be kind to one another.